Good morning. Welcome to the Fish Site and InnovaFeed's webinar. Today we're going to be focusing on how the shrimp industry can simultaneously improve its performance and sustainability through the use of novel alternative feed ingredients. I'm joined today by a very illustrious panel of representatives. We have 3 representatives of feed companies, and we have 1 representative of one of the largest insect producing companies in the world, and we're going to have looking forward to very much a very good debate and discussion about the topics to hand. And I'm going to allow the panelists to introduce themselves as and when they're asked a question, rather than going around. Before I start, just to let those in the audience know, if they want to ask any questions, there'll be 20 minutes Q&A with the audience at the end of this. And if you're able to, or if you'd like to put any questions in, please put them into the Q&A box, which you'll see at the bottom of your screen. There's a chat box too, but that's more informal. Q&As for the formal questions that we'll go through at the end. And yes, as the questions come in, members of the audience can upvote them. So if there's questions that you think are particularly good, please give them a tick, give them a thumbs up, and they should go to the top of the pile. Anyway, thank you very much. And to kick off, I will introduce you to Olivier, who is the technical director at GrowBest, which is a large Taiwanese shrimp feed company or feed company. And he is going to talk about the requirements for GrowBest. So if he's going to adopt any of these new feed ingredients or any feed ingredients at all, how he goes about it. Olivier, over to you, please.
Thanks, Rob. So no need to introduce myself. This is good. Thank you very much for doing it for me. Yes, so I'm working for GrowBest. So GrowBest is a Taiwanese company, but it has actually 14 feed mills in 8 countries all over Asia. And one of the specialties of the company is the fact that it develops its own feed additives and functional additive and premixes. So we have 3 factories just to develop them. So to answer your question, Rob, it means some of these critical ingredients, additives, are manufactured by us ourselves at our own plant. But it doesn't mean we don't source other ingredients. Of course we do. So we look at the usual plant-based ingredients, but also insect meal or algal-based, microbial-based, algal-based. We search all possible ingredients. Now, the way we approach this is really, we have a first evaluation done in-house at our headquarters in Taiwan. If these ingredients are seen as valuable for the company, they then go further down the process. Then we go for animal testing and evaluations. We have locations over Asia for that. And then if validated for its benefits, then the ingredient has to be confirmed, if you want, for commercial production. As you understand, we are present all over Asia. So that means we must make sure that the ingredients of interest is available for most of our plants, so we can provide a consistent product to all our customers, whether they are in Thailand, Vietnam, India, Indonesia, China, wherever. So this is very critical for us, this availability and consistency of the product.
Okay, and what sort of scale would that be? I mean, if you were to say, looking for a new ingredient, how much would you need? What would be a meaningful amount?
Well, it's not so easy to say, because I would say some ingredients, I would describe them as a kind of commodity, if you want. These are the standard ingredients that are used all the feed plants, and you source them locally. Then you will have other ingredients that have a unique property. And these are the ones that we centralize, if you want, to really validate them to be used globally to our client for some, or going to the market. But to give you an idea, our capacity right now, our production is about 800,000 tons of feed, aqua feed, okay? So it's for shrimp mostly, but also for high value fish. Okay. So it gives you an idea that if it's an ingredient that you need to incorporate a bit like a bit of pepper, it's not so much, but it's an ingredient that is becoming 5 or 10% inclusion rate. You need a substantial production capacity to supply us.
Brilliant, thank you, Olivier. Maye, you produce one of these novel ingredients, and how do you position it? Do you position it as a commodity? Can you tell us a little bit about it? And do you position it as a commodity, or do you position it as a spice, as Olivier would say?
Sure. I work for InnovaFeed. We're one of the largest insect producers at this stage, and we provide ingredients for different species. We've traditionally focused more on the salmon industry, and looking at insect meal as a fish meal replacement, so more on the nutritional aspect. But over the past 3 years, we've invested a lot in product development and R&D, because we saw that on shrimp, insect meal could actually have more of a functional effect and be positioned more as a bioactive meal. And we kind of see that effect across 3 levels. The first one is we see significant gains in performance across FCR, with improvements up to 30%, across growth with improvements of an order of magnitude of 20%. Another lever we also see that insect meal can bring benefits for shrimp is on health. We've done several trials in challenge conditions with white spot syndrome, with hepatopancreatic necrosis disease, and there we see improvements in mortality, up to 40% less mortality, with low inclusion rates between 4 and 5% of our insect meal products. So it's required tweaking the product a little bit and really understanding what were the intrinsic properties of insect that enable these benefits. And so, one of the questions that came through before the webinar was, how do we explain those results? And I think there's kind of 3 X factors that we see for insect use in shrimp. The first one is insects produce antimicrobial peptides as their way to protect themselves from diseases. And you can trigger the production of those AMPs so that they can then be transmitted to the shrimps to convey protection. The second X factor is the fatty acid that's predominant in our insect meal is lauric acid, which is known for having antimicrobial property and improving digestibility. And then the third X factor is insects are very rich in chitin. Chitin is actually a substance that you find in shrimp, in most invertebrates, and when they shield their skins, they'll eat part of it. And so through a lot of R&D and product development, we've managed to optimize these X factors to create this new product specifically for shrimp, which we call NovaGain, and we're launching this year. And that we're hoping can help achieve significant gains, not only in sustainability, but economic gains as well for farmers.
That's very interesting. So you're positioning it for salmon, you're positioning it as more of a commodity, and for shrimp as more of a functional ingredient.
Yes, well, because we're seeing very different results, and so we've really pushed our product development much further on shrimp to get this specific product.
And is there a lot of extra processing involved to differentiate the 2 products?
It's not so much, well, it's more knowledge around the processing and the impact it will have on the final product. How do you preserve those AMPs? How do you find the optimal quantity of lauric acid? What level of chitin do you want in the product?
Okay, thank you. This one's for Monsieur Bédier, to Alexandre, so I will go for your surnames. Apologies for the pronunciation. Alexandre, you've done a lot of trials with novel ingredients. Can you tell us firstly a little bit about your company and your job, and also go into how the trials have gone so far?
Oh, all right, sure. And thank you very much, Rob. So I work for Nutrima. We are a feed company based in Reunion Island, which is located between Madagascar and Mauritius in the Western Indian Ocean. We've been involved predominantly in the shrimp feed industry. and mainly on the premium shrimp feed in industry. We've been supplying predominantly Madagascar and the African continent. We've been focusing on premium feed that are certified by different standards, such as organic feed, ASC, Red Label. So it's a complete range of certifications. So through these certifications, we were able to trial different novel ingredients. We had some pretty interesting results. Our main target species is the tiger shrimp. And we've trialed different novel ingredients such as algae, mycotoxin binders, yeasts, and they prove to be pretty efficient in the condition where the shrimps are farmed to our customers.
Good. And any particular ones that stand out? Any particular trials or any particular ingredients that performed well for your shrimp?
Well, in fact, it depends what you are looking for. For example, we had some pretty good results with an algae that is rich in the DHA. Then this was to reduce the incorporation of marine ingredient to comply with the ASC certificate without losing performance. So this helped to reduce the marine ingredient inclusion while keeping up with the performance and the taste too. That is very important to our customers.
Okay, and that's interesting what you say about including it to comply with ASC regulations or ASC criteria. What is that? What's the limit on marine ingredients there? What limit are they setting?
Well, in fact, it really depends on the performance of the farm. They have to have a maximum setting of FCR. So based on the FCR that the farm can achieve, you've got a certain input of marine ingredient from the feed. So it definitely depends on the FCR from the farm, but by predicting the FCR that the customer will have, we can formulate a feed and adjust the marine ingredients in the feed.
Okay. Thank you, because obviously, yeah, there's part of this webinar is about the novel ingredients themselves, and part of it's also about the sustainability of shrimp feed. And that's something that Alexandre, Monsieur Vier, is something of an expert on. So can you talk a bit about that, please, Alexandre?
Thanks, Rob, for the introduction. My name is Alexander, and I work for Goldcoin, so similar to Olivier. I work for an Asian feed company. Goldcoin is not as big as GrowBest, but quite well established, and we have a very customer-based feed production. So basically, if some of our customer request specific types of feed, we don't mind to produce just for them. When it comes about sustainability, we have a big discussion about what is sustainable and how to improve sustainability. So as Alexandre mentioned, the ASC, all those labels already are providing some guidelines, some quite interesting point of view. But within Goldcoin, we decided to go a bit further because some of the certification are uh, not complete, or at least they cannot be openly complete because of the restriction. So for example, the main two ingredients that are wishing to be more sustainable is like the soybean and the fish meal. So for soybean, they push us as a feed miller to purchase responsible sourced soybean. They also push us to reduce our marine ingredients and to use more of the byproducts. So this is already a good trend. But the other thing that those labels do not guarantee or do not inform is, for example, for the soybean, it's soybean is used for human consumption. So there is a competition for human. Soybean is from Latin America. So when you Latin America or the US, and when you produce your feed in Asia, there is a lot of transportation costs, which is not necessarily environmental friendly. You also have, for example, the water consumption use, fresh water consumption used to crop the soybean, which now we know we're gonna have issue to have fresh water for people. So using more fresh water to grow plants to feed fish and shrimps that will feed us in the end, is it really necessary? And for the fish meal side, it's true that they push us to use byproducts, but the byproduct do not ensure reduction of bycatch. For example, sea turtle catch, bycatch, because all of those are not accounted into the catch, so they are not reported. And even though the DNA tracing do not trace the bycatch product, they just trace the fish that end up in your fish meal. So it does not guarantee that the fishing boats are actually reducing or effectively reducing their sea turtle, dolphin, sharks, any bycatch. So what we believe within Goldcoin is we should balance and we should diversify our diets. So not necessarily going through more purchase of responsible soybean or responsible fish meal, but diversify with some insect meal, some algae meal, some other product to have a much more diversified diet, which is also for the better of the animals. And in the same time, it reduces the impact that we have on the overall resources. We also try to focus as much as possible on the local products. So if there is as good product find locally, we will go for it rather than import raw material. And as much as possible, we use green cases or solar panel energy for our plants or our farms. So we move toward that direction to be more sustainable than the label.
Wow, that's very impressive. And where's that pressure to become more sustainable coming from, or is that something that's a company policy through and through? I mean, presumably there's something driving that.
I think there is two things. The first one is a company decision, and the second one is because we work in a very a sector like the aquaculture, which is quite controversial, that has in the past received a lot of controversial issues. So if we do not act now, we're gonna end up in a bad position later on, which it would be more difficult to get out of it. So much better to tackle it ahead of time. And anyhow, the price of the feed and all those responsible label makes the raw material more expensive. So if you can diversify and be more robust against those price increase, then it's also beneficial for the farm that will not support the increase in cost, and also for the feed mill to produce at a better cost and providing better margin to improve continuously and provide to the customer the best performance they wish for.
Okay, thank you. And in terms of what are the sort of the more novel ingredients that you've been trialing, and how would you rank them in terms of their sustainability?
So, for example, seaweeds, seaweed meal, which is actually not they can be cultivated on the waste like ammonia or sea wastes, and they can also be produced within the farm. So it's like producing to depollute the farm, and the pollutant they absorb, like ammonia and phosphorus, are actually their food, and they can be later on turned on into valuable protein for the animals. So it's like a green cycle. So I would rank them as the first. After you have like all the animal that are fed on byproducts, like the insect, for example, they can be fed on different types of human substrate or byproducts.
Mhm.
So it's also a suitable raw material to replace. And after, I would say all the yeast. Yeast is widely used. It's a wide byproduct. So this is also another innovative and let's say green ingredients.
Okay, and are you able to incorporate all those three things into some of your feeds, or do you just put one into one and one into another, or what's the sort of the level of inclusion of these things that you're able to do?
I would say it depends on what you target. Like Alexandre mentioned, depends on your farm performance expectation or of the constraint from the label. We will use more of some, more of others. So it's kind of a balance. If you want some immunity product, if you want, I know, for example, like a Gropus, they have a separate their grade based on immunity booster product or growth product. So Goldcoin is doing similar, like depends on what we want to reach. We're going to use more of this raw material rather than this one.
Okay, thank you. Olivier, from a Grow Best perspective, which novel ingredients have you trialed, and which ones do you think are the most promising, but both in terms of sustainability and in terms of performance?
Well, I think to build up on what was just mentioned by Alexandre, this is exactly that. We are looking at all these ingredients, those that we manufacture, those that we source, and then we basically look at the benefit for the farmer. Our priority is the farmer, our angle. So that means on the sustainability side, we look at the productivity of the farmer. So that means lower FCR, which is a very important issue for us, and the improved growth rate. And that means in order to get this, you need to have a good survival and good yield for the farmer. So the profitability of the farmer depends on, it's simple. Huh? You need a good yield, so therefore you need good growth and good survival, is basic. But in order to get there, it's not so straightforward. So for us, like mentioned, we look at growth enhancer or immune enhancer, and we have our technical people on site to make recommendation to the farmer to improve that way. So we are not targeting or presenting our feeds with key ingredients inside, saying, oh, we have high algal base. No, we more look at the function that feed would have for the farmer. But then accordingly, we will source, of course, one ingredient or the other that we know are better for immune enhancer or for palatability or something like that. And this is how we would, if you want, incorporate them in our premixes that we then dispatch to each of our feed mills in order to have this consistent approach. Okay, so we are not so much documenting, if you want, the kind of ingredients that are listed, but rather the function of that specific feed or premixes. This is the angle of the company.
So I take it from that the farmers are more interested in the performance than in the ingredients themselves.
For sure, yes. Yes. They care. Basically, but I think this is a discussion on sustainability. You know, for a farmer, in order to have him work with you, you need to make sure his business is profitable. So this is the number one thing. And then for us, we need to see how we can improve the production of feeds. So the efficacy of the feed mill, the quality of the ingredients we source. This is our responsibility. But eventually the farmer cares mostly about how we can help him be profitable. So we are really at the connection between the two sides, if you want. And this is what I see in a way the role of an aquafeed company when we drive sustainability. Yes.
Fantastic, thank you. Maye, obviously you're looking at insects. There was some concern initially that people might be put off to a certain extent the use of insects in feeds, but actually that seems to, in Europe at least, that seems to be the opposite seems to be happening.
Yes, I think in a lot of countries, people consume insects directly. In Europe, it's not really part of our culture. Nevertheless, when we started launching value chains with trout players and salmon players, we quickly realized that insect is viewed as a natural part of food chains. And it's actually a little bit surprising that in the past, insects have not been introduced in food chains earlier. Now we've realized it's because it's quite complicated to grow them at large scale. We've realized firsthand, but they have this extraordinary ability to transform very low value biomass, which there is plenty of volumes around the world, specifically co-products of the agro industry or food waste. And they can turn that into high quality protein, high quality fatty acids by concentrating these nutrients. And I think people recognize that. People recognize that in nature, animals eat insects because of their nutritional properties. So we actually haven't faced that yuck factor that you could expect. And I think not only that, not only are they viewed as natural, a lot of people view insects today as very sustainable. And I'm very aligned with Olivier and the rest of the panelists around the fact that performance, health are the two biggest levers of sustainability, and that's really what we're targeting with our insect ingredients. Nevertheless, we have this advantage to also be able to set up production models that are very circular and virtuous in that we can recycle what is considered waste or byproducts of other industries and therefore not have impacts on additional resources. And I think the crux of sustainability is how do you produce more with less? How do you produce more with less impact on resources, with less feed, with less costs on the environment, but also on your bottom line for the farmers. I think insects in feed do not have this yuck factor based on 4 years of experience, and on the other hand, they benefit from a very sustainable image, and rightly so, because we've been able to quantify those benefits.
And yes, you touched on how you do more with less. Just sort of on that theme, how about scaling up? I mean, the insect industry is attracting a lot of investment. It's attracting a lot of interest, but production levels, I believe, only 10,000 tons of insect meal were produced last year globally.
Yes.
And how do you think the insect sector is going to overcome the volume challenges?
I mean, that's the whole challenge, really, and we're working very hard at it. InnovaFeed's ambition is really to be able to produce very large volumes. We've announced our factory in France inauguration in November, and it has a capacity of 15,000 tons per year. We've already announced our next site that will be located in the US in partnership with ADM, so we can use their co-products. That one will have a capacity of 60,000 tons a year. We have many more sites in the pipeline. The idea is really to achieve that scale as fast as possible, because the scale will give us economies of scale, but also will lead to impact. And Olivier mentioned it. Most of the players, they need availability and consistency before they can commit to these novel ingredients. So it is key, and it is our main objective. Out of a team of 150 people, have 130 engineers working on that scale up and focusing to deliver that.
And can you give us some sense of the scale up, the sort of numbers that you're hoping to produce once all these new facilities come online?
Yes, we're targeting about 300 to 500,000 tons by 2030.
That's impressive. So Olivier, once it gets to that sort of volume, do you think that's when the likes of GrowBest are really going to start looking at insect meal in start taking it seriously, I suppose, or more
I
seriously?
I don't have a checkbook with me, so I cannot comment. But seriously, yes, I think for us this will be the real threshold, if you want. Once you are becoming a supplier of ingredient, the right volume, then it's easier to start to negotiate and discuss where we can incorporate these ingredients, not only in a unique feed or specialty feed, but really across a wide range of our diets. And then it becomes really interesting, yes. And as I said, the way we approach it, we have our sustainability officer based in Taiwan and our key procurement team based in Taiwan and in Hong Kong. And the decisions are really made by this core of people with a focus on sourcing, formulation, performance, and sustainability. And then from there, we roll it out to a few other stakeholders in the company to validate it. But basically, once you have an ingredient that you can already certify the supply, it makes it very easily to go through the evaluation process, of course, because this would be the first question from a procurement or a formulation side. How consistent is your production and your product, and performance and supply. So the key questions that people would ask. So this is very good news to have availability of an ingredient like that. Yes.
Good, thank you, Monsieur Bédier. You're producing for a relatively niche market for high-end monodon producers. What are their main requirements, and what do they view? What do they think of novel ingredients? And also, for you, you're fairly unique in that you are producing shrimp feed within the EU. Réunion is part of France, part of the EU. So your hands are slightly tied by EU regulations. How does that impact your adoption of novel feed ingredients?
Yeah, actually, there are two main points to that. The first one, yes, is the European legislation. Obviously, it's not as wide, and the panel of ingredient is not as wide as people could use in Asia, for example. So we can only use a few of the additives. But that doesn't mean that we cannot achieve some very good performance too. The other thing too is that our customers, they mostly work with certification standards, and before being able to use a specific ingredient or a novel ingredient, it has to be approved by the certification. So that's usually so you have to do some trial before and to prove that the ingredient is beneficial and that it can improve a certain aspect of the farming, while maintaining the premium standard of the feed and the shrimp in the end. Sometimes the standards can be a little bit in contradiction. For example, the organic standards has a maximum of marine ingredient incorporation of 25%, while the ASC the ASC limits it. So it can be a little bit tricky sometimes, but that's why you have to diversify your raw material sourcing, as the other panelists said, so you don't rely on a specific raw material.
Okay, thank you. We have only 5 minutes until we open the floor to the audience. The question I'd quite like to ask, there's a whole load of different novel ingredients out there. I'd like to ask each of you which one you'd like to most like to see succeed, and which one you would think is going to is the forerunner, and there may be more than one. But I'd like to, yeah, which one do you think would be the best one in terms of sustainability, and which one do you think is the most likely to succeed in terms of scalability? Monsieur Vier, starting with you, you mentioned that seaweed was potentially the most sustainable. Do you think that it's possible to scale that up to make a real difference across the shrimp sector?
I said that sustainable is a diversity first. So if seaweed is produced in warm, hot countries, it is not in cold countries or temperate countries, not as efficiently as well, at least. So my wish is that all of those solutions end up and succeed, because it will give more opportunity for people to choose what is the most suitable for them. For example, the insect meal from InnovaFeed is produced mainly in the US. I mean, their plan is for the US. Maybe May can correct if I made a mistake, but is from the US and Europe. So if you need to export the raw material to Asia, you have transportation costs, extra. Same for the seaweed. Seaweed is produced in Asia and exported to the world. Yeast can be produced more or less everywhere with different variation. So I really wish that all solution can succeed. So as a feed mill, we have a large panel to deal with, and also in terms of cost and availability, we can all find our sustainable benefits.
Okay, thank you. May, I think I have an idea of what you might say, but surprise us.
No, I'm actually very like you, Alexandre, on this one. I think you need a basket of new ingredients in order to build resilience and really push sustainability. My personal opinion is today insects are probably the most advanced in terms of being able to scale up and demonstrating performance. But we're very excited to see many other alternative ingredients scale up and come on the market. So I think it's going to be a few exciting years for aquaculture, with single cell and algae, all of the contenders that are looking into novel ingredients.
And just to go on from that, do you sort of interact quite a lot with the other novel ingredient producers? What's the sort of is it a competitive field, or is there a bit of a bit of cooperation there?
No, I think there's quite a lot of cooperation. For instance, one of the value chains we have in France is a trout fed with both insect meal and algae oil to fully replace marine resources in the trout's feed. And it's important that we show that these alternative ingredients can coexist in a feed and still be competitive. So there is a need for different alternative ingredient players to collaborate and to work with feed producers to make it work in the future.
Thank you. Very diplomatic. Monsieur Bédier, do you have any particular ones that you like the look of and ones that you think are going to succeed?
Yeah, I definitely agree with the other panelists. The diversity is the key. Especially now we are seeing with the pandemic that some of your sources can get blocked. So you have to have different alternatives, and also the local sourcing is pretty important. I would also stress the importance of the byproducts. This is something that we are, I think, that we need to work more on. People are using byproducts sometimes, but we can do some better quality byproducts too. That could be used.
And that's byproducts from fisheries, byproducts from terrestrial farming. What are you?
From fisheries, for example. Yeah.
Okay, Thank you. Olivier, what are your thoughts?
I think I would just say that what I noticed over the last year or 2 years is a huge jump in the capacity of production, but also processing of some of these new ingredients. And what it means is suddenly you can produce with a certain consistent. I remember the first discussion with insect meal producers years ago. It was interesting, but every time you had the issue, well, we are working on having a stable composition of the finished good, despite the fact you are sourcing from the raw material to feed the animal, you have variability. Now, when I see we are really moving towards a consistent product. And this is really a very interesting process. So you see this both, of course, in the fermentation byproduct that are sourced, but also insect meal and others. And for me, this is what I see, in a way, the one that to be able to produce this volume and consistent products are the one that will be, I think, receiving most of the favors of the feed mills, because it's an ingredient easy to incorporate in our production. So that would be very interesting there.
And is that processing going on amongst is that the novel ingredient producers who are processing it, or is that something the feed mills are doing?
No, I'm talking about discussion with the new ingredients producers, right, who explain that they have improved the processing of, say, the final step of their product in order to reach this consistent product of composition.
So the quality of the products getting to you of these novel ingredients has improved?
Yes.
And presumably, how do the feed mill, the way you handle them must have an impact as well, and you must have to come to terms with how to deal with them, how to incorporate them into your own formulation.
Yeah, of course. How to put this? You start with a basic discussion on the composition and whatever the specs of a product, but very quickly you move into how these ingredients would interfere with the production method of the feed, on the performance of the diet. If you incorporate an ingredient at a certain inclusion rate, you need to make sure it does not have negative impact on the performance of the feed as such, and how it impacts the production at the end. So we are moving away from the purely interest, if you want, intellectual interest of the new ingredient, now into something much more industrial to see how we can really include them. So the discussions are becoming much more interesting in a way that we are getting close to how we can really work with these ingredients. So the discussions are quite different now compared to what they were 10 years ago, let's say.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. You've all given very good different perspectives on things. We've got a lot of questions coming in from the audience, so we'll try and get through as many as we can. We've got just over 15 minutes left. And the one that's top of the pile at the moment is from Remy Gratacap. Some of you may know. And this is addressed to Olivier and Alexandre. I'm not sure which Alexandre. But what type of, what volumes in either kilos or tons are required for first evaluations and animal testing?
You select who answers first.
You go first, Olivier.
Well, when we have a new ingredient, typically we start with just 5 kilos for simple tests, small scale test, 5 kilos. After that, yeah, okay. If you want to validate, then you start to need hundreds of kilos to a ton. But the first evaluation, a few kilos is enough, typically.
Okay. And Alexandre, either Alexandre?
I agree with Olivier. Usually you need like 5 kilos to just evaluate the base of the ingredient and do some physical examination and eventually run a lab test. And after, you will need like at least 1 or 2 batch production to evaluate on a large scale. So, but as a primary evaluation, usually, yeah, small amount of feed, depends if it's a feed additive or if it's commodities. But yeah, 5 kilo around is more than enough.
Okay, thank you. Alexandre, other Alexandre, anything to add to that?
Yep, it really depends on the size of the trial you want to conduct. Yes, if you're looking at lab trials, only a few kilos will be fine. But usually, what we like to do is to do and is to do trial that are made on sites at our customers' farm. Usually they have different genetics, and the genetics can respond differently. So that's why it's also important to trial with the customers if they have the capacity to do it.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, we have a good question here. There's not sure who it's from, but it says a lot of the novel ingredient producers or alternative ingredient producers are startups or not ready with upscaling, and it's difficult to find out which ones have commercial products available. An initiative that helps feed manufacturers find their way in this novel ingredients world would be great. So do the feed producers on the panel, would they agree with that? Is it hard to work out which ones are serious, which ones have got available ingredients? Presumably that's you have networks out there helping you to work these things out. Olivier, do you want to comment on that?
Okay. I would say yes. It starts from a network. Typically, I think we receive requests daily, of course. So we can be approached either from, let's say, the senior management of a producer, and also from the sales people to each of a feed mill. So it can go from different angles. Let's say the local supplier who may approach our local feed mill, and then from there it goes back to headquarters or directly to headquarters. We have different approaches. But typically, we are interested in discussing with people who have something that is commercial or pre-commercial. Because for the rest, we have our own R&D, and we have 3 factories to make additives. So we develop ourselves something. So we are not necessarily interested in sourcing at that level because we do it ourselves. But for other ingredients that we are not working on, we are always open to discuss with people who are close to commercial scale, or at least who are asking for our interest for this ingredient so they can source extra financial support to upscale their production. This is basically the way we see our contribution. Yes.
Okay. Either Alexandre, does the process differ for you guys? If someone wants to wants you to try a novel ingredient, how do they go about it?
It's similar, but because we are very customer base, so we have some customer who have requests. So most of the time it starts from the farmer. So if a big group is requesting like a non-GMO diet or ASC certified diet or something like that, we're gonna do. If they request us to use specific raw materials, we will also do. But otherwise, we have our own direction, similar to any feed mills, where we decide what type of novel ingredient we want to go for, and it's also based on availability, price, and volume. If the price is known but not the volume, we don't spend too much time. If the volume is known but the price is not known, then same. So by the time someone can provide a volume and a price and a stable quality raw material, then we can engage further a trial on the novel ingredients.
Okay, thank you.
There's
Alexandre?
actually an organization called F3, and they do a pretty good job of listing all of the raw materials or novel ingredients available, and the estimated capacity of players, and some of the product specifications around digestibility, protein content for protein meals. And at the moment, they're also running a few webinars focused on each of those novel ingredients. Worth checking out.
I would add something to what Maye says, is sometimes you also need to consider the availability of the registration status of these novel ingredients in the country where you want to try or decide to use it, because sometimes it's a big issue.
Yes, I can only echo that.
Brilliant. Thank you all. Now I got a question about whether anyone is developing novel ingredients specifically for biofloc systems.
I would say Goldcoin has a quite extensive knowledge on shrimp feed for biofloc system, because I would say Indonesia is mainly biofloc based, and we have quite extensive experience there. So we develop feed, not necessarily special novel ingredient for that, but we develop special feed for biofloc.
Okay, very good. And how do you differentiate it?
I would say mainly by the composition, because the biofloc provide food for the shrimp, so you can provide a lesser energy or lesser protein diet, which will pollute less. But your diet need also to provide feed for this biofloc, because it's gonna be digested and ejected by the shrimp as a feces. So the objective is to make use of the feces for the biofloc.
Okay, and in terms of ingredients, how does that change things?
You need to provide like carbon-based ingredient that could be used as a feed for the biofloc. So it's a mixture of different ingredients. I cannot disclose exactly what ingredient, but there is definitely a different specification for the raw material for a biofloc diet than for a RAS or lining pond non-biofloc type of diet.
Okay, thank you. Olivier, this one's for you. GrowBest is using ingredients that can act as growth enhancers and immune enhancers. Okay, but are any of these a green ingredient? Can you give some examples?
Are they what? Sorry, are they saying those ingredients?
Are they a green ingredient? They're questioning your sustainability credentials, Olivier.
Okay, what I will tell you is the way we operate all our plants, all our additives that we incorporate in all of these are made at our 3 own factories in Taiwan. The way we produce is proprietary, so I cannot disclose details about the way they produce and what is inside, because this is really the core of the company. So you can imagine that we are very keen on keeping this knowledge in-house, since this is what makes us so different from the other aquafeed companies. So I'm worried. I'm very sorry. I cannot tell you much more. It's a very good question, but that's about it I can say at this point. Sorry about that.
That's all right. Okay, here's something we haven't really touched on actually. It's quite an important issue. How do feed companies manage to keep costs down while replacing fish meal and soybean with alternatives? We haven't really spoken about the costs of these alternative ingredients. Maye, you could probably start off talking about this. Just how does the price of insect meal compare to fish meal, for example, or soy meal at the moment, and do you think that's going to change?
So today we definitely operate at a bit of a premium, but the ambition is to have this scale to be able to be competitive with conventional ingredients. I think if you look at the full picture, there's also the benefits that need to be taken into account. Olivier, Alexandre, both Alexandre, we're talking about functional benefits. So it's all a matter of producing more with less costs. And so I think, you need to take a full bottom line approach when you consider these alternative ingredients, rather than just comparing a cost of a commodity versus a novel ingredient. And that's the approach that we've been taking. And then on the long term, obviously, scale will help with bringing down the cost of novel ingredients.
Okay, Alexandre Bédier, just to you there, because you're producing very high-end feeds. Are the producers able to cope with the costs of feeds produced using more novel ingredients?
Well, it definitely depends. If they can market the shrimp at a higher price, because they can advertise the fact that the shrimp has been raised with in a more sustainable way. This can be a way to overcome the price increase, but also if the novel ingredient improve the performance on the farm, the extra cost is absorbed. A small improvement in the FCR means very good gain in the pocket of the farmer.
Okay, and are they able to charge premiums for their set? You know, if they're selling certified shrimp or shrimp that have had particular diets, what's the market like at the moment?
Well, actually, the premium market is a bit low now because especially in Europe, the restaurants are mainly closed. So high-end shrimp are mainly sold to restaurants. So, but there are alternatives still. But it definitely depends the market you are looking to.
Okay, thank you. This one's for everyone. I don't know who wants to answer it, but the question says that most of these novel ingredients are destined for grow-out feed. Do you eventually see these being incorporated into hatchery or post-larval feed? Is this something your companies are already thinking about? Is that the case to begin with? And if so, yeah, is that something you are considering? Monsieur Vier?
For the some novel ingredient are used only for a specific growth stage, or at least designed for a feed to be used at a specific stage. These also answer the supply of those novel ingredients. For example, insect, the volume is quite small. So if you want to use insect, you need to have small volume of feed to ensure a continuous supply. So sometimes you don't have the choice and you can only put them in a specific either early grow out or hatchery feed or maturation diet. And like to bounce back to the question before about the price, also those small diet are usually more expensive, not very much, but a little bit difference, and this can actually sometimes absorb or balance and compensate the cost for those novel ingredients.
Okay, and would that be the same, Olivier? Would you think
I would
demand
say
for different life stages?
Definitely, and I can say, as you know, from my previous employment, I know we were working on these new ingredients. So people working for hatchery diets were testing, evaluating new ingredients. They were not necessarily including them, but they were evaluating them, whether it is broodstock or different stage of larval rearing or nursery. And at Grobes, we also look at how they could be included at critical stage, whether it is the first few weeks of in the nursery or later the grow-out stage. Yes.
Okay, thank you. One last question. This is one that a lot of people think probably crossed their minds. You know, how far are we from producing shrimp feed, or I know it can be done already, but that substitutes all marine ingredients for novel alternatives. So who's doing that already, and how widely do you think that can be practiced in the long run?
What is the question? Sorry, is it possible to make a fish meal free feed or something like that?
Exactly, yeah, a marine ingredient free feed for shrimp.
I'm not sure it's an objective in itself. I think fish meal has lots of great properties. In our view, at least, you know, if you can find sustainable fish and marine resources. There's no real need to completely replace fish meal in the diet. But I'm sure the feed formulators are better positioned than me to answer that.
I would say, who is willing to pay for a feed with no fish meal? That would be a better question. Who in the industry, how the industry can afford for a fish meal free diet? Like, it exists already. It's been produced, but only at a high price, and because you need to balance the benefit from the fish meal. So, yeah.
You think it's a while off still, or it'll only be a niche market?
It depends if the customer, I mean, if we manage to open and the consumer is willing to pay more expensive for a shrimp fed without fish meal or without marine ingredient, if the public is willing to pay for that price, then the whole industry will follow. But as long as the public is not willing to pay for that or don't see the benefit in there, these types of diets don't make sense.
Thank you. Anyone else? Olivier, any thoughts on that?
I think Alexandre summarized it very well. The technical challenge people can do is been done. The point is, like May mentioned, why do we want to do that? Maybe we just want to balance it off, because you need then to bring an awful lot of amino acids to balance all the key unique nutritional ingredient you find in fish meal needs to be identified from somewhere else. Some of them can be sold from insect meal, others, but you may need to add quite a few other things to get to a performing diet. So it's still quite challenging. So we are not there yet, but many people are looking at it, yes. But to my knowledge, it's not there yet.
Thank you. Alexandre,
yep, and I would also add that the consumer's perception sometimes is different. Usually, people in people's mind, shrimp have to eat fish in order to be tasty and to grow well. So I'm not sure that people would really appreciate a shrimp that hasn't been fed fish.
Okay. Brilliant. Well, thank you all very much. We're run slightly over, but thank you all for very, very good contributions to today. Thank you very much to our audience for tuning in. This will be a recording of this will be made available, I think, very shortly. So we'll keep you up to speed there. Sorry we didn't get to answer all your questions, but yes, look forward to keeping in touch, and please keep in touch via the fish site and via our relevant companies. Thank you all very much for your time.
Thanks a lot, Rob. Thanks,
Thank you.
Olivier.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.